Hey YouTube, how's it going? So right now I'm currently working on another project. I'm not going to say what it is. I will give you a small hint. It's about a very long song. So in the meantime, I plan on releasing these probably once every week or so. We'll see how it goes. But I'm going to do A through D of my record collection and then kind of go on from there in other separate videos. And that's pretty much it. Mostly this is just a very elaborate way to convince you that this is not actually a ska channel, which my first video was about ska. That's usually a very good indicator that you're probably watching someone who's like obsessed with ska. I do like ska, but it's a very small portion of my collection, as you'll see. But I guess we'll get right into the A's. So the first one is the Aquabat. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. The first one is A Perfect Circle, which was interesting because Rick Beato, I don't know when I'm releasing this, probably today, who knows. Rick Beato had done an interview with Josh Freese, who is the drummer for this band. This is a super group, so they're made up of a bunch of other members from other bands. Josh Freese is one of my favorite drummers, and I found out about him through a documentary called "Sweatin' to the Oldies," and we'll get to that. Don't worry when we start getting into the V's. But that's how I found out about him. And then when I found out that he was going to be in a band with Maynard and a guitarist from Smashing Pumpkins, I was sold. And their first album, Murder Norms, was really good. I think I like this one a little bit better. And mostly because the first, I think 3 songs on here, The Noose, The Package, and Weak and Powerless are amazing songs. Weak and Powerless is probably one of my favorite songs. But Rick Beato had just interviewed Josh Freese, and in it he mentions that Weak and Powerless is probably one of his favorite songs of all time. And I don't think that's a very unreasonable opinion. This album is absolutely amazing. If you have not heard A Perfect Circle and you like kind of weird experimental, kind of a little bit slower than normal, it's not going to get some really heavy, well, I guess there is some heavier stuff in here. But it's not going to be as fast-paced as like an older Tool album, which you would expect with Maynard being on it. A lot of these are kind of very slow, especially The Package and The News are a little bit slower. And Weak and Powerless, I would say that's a bit slower, but there's a kick drum that's constantly slapping around in the background. This is just an amazing album. And the first 3 tracks, just the first side of the first disc, I guess that's, yeah, absolutely amazing. Big fan. Unfortunately, they only had 2 good albums. I listened to the most recent one just recently. I was like, oh, that's right, they came out with a new album. And I think there was a couple good, decent songs on there, but the rest are terrible. Emotive was awful. I think there was another one. I can't remember. There was another one. I'm going to out-jog these a little bit so that way I can keep my place. I think there was another one. I don't remember if I was, that I hated it as much as Emotive, but Emotive was just awful. Just awful. Sadly, as of right now, this is the only Alice in Chains album that I have, but it's my favorite Alice in Chains album. Usually unplugged albums are awful. There's a couple exceptions. There's the Nirvana one, which everybody thinks is the best album. It's not. And then this one, which I think the people who know about it think it's great. This is a band that worked very well with Unplugged. Most of them are absolute terrible. Some of them were train wrecks. I think the most notable one would be the Lauryn Hill one, which was just awful. It's almost half of it is just her rambling just incoherently and screwing up the guitar. But yeah, this one was really good, and this is probably one of the last performances that Layne Staley did before he started becoming a recluse and dying. And what's really tragic about this, if you listen to the lyrics of Alice in Chains, almost all of the songs are in the same kind of, not all of them, but there's so many Alice in Chains songs, especially the really good ones, that are about people who feel like their life has been wasted, or they're on the verge of dying, or they know they're gonna die, and just thinking about how terrible everything is. And that's pretty much kind of reflected a lot of Layne Staley's life, especially in his later years, where he just kind of threw away his whole life addicted to heroin. But this is an absolute banger of an album. And every time I listen to this album, I think of Quake, the video game Quake that came out in, I think, about the same time. I think this was 96 this came out. It doesn't say on the front. I don't want to sort to the back. It's hard to read. Oh, no, it's 1996. So I think it came out about the same year. And I was listening to this album a lot when my family got, I was a kid. My family got the first computer for the, first modern computer. We've always had like an old IBM PC Junior, but that thing was like older than me. And when we were going through the line at the computer store, they had like a little free disc of Quake, and I was like, "What's this?" And they're like, "Oh, it's a free game. Go ahead. No, it's a free trial to a game." And this was before the game actually came out. And so and I ended up buying the game later on with my own money. I started mowing lawns as soon as I was like, I gotta have the rest of this game. And I played that, and I played the shareware with this in the CD tray. So I was listening to this album while I was playing Quake. It would just loop the song over and over until I got to the next level, and then I'd choose another track and listen to that over and over until I beat the level. So every time I hear this, like my mind starts racing. Like, oh, I remember playing Quake and all the good times about that. So this was a meme album. I only have this because it's a meme. I don't think it's particularly good. It's not my style of music, and I'm sorry if it's yours. But this is Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass, and the main reason why I bought it was it was in the dollar bin. And it has the track Spanish Flea, which if you're not familiar with what Spanish Flea is the theme to the dating game. It's the song that's in like a numerous like early internet memes, that one that goes like bop 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 bop. So I saw this and I was like, that'd be funny to have in my collection. Not a big fan, but every once in a while I'll put on Spanish Flea just as a laugh. Now I'm not really big on reggae. I think in the realm of reggae, ska, and dub, I kind of fall more in line with like ska and then dub. I do like dub, but I can only listen to that sort of stuff for so long. But there's a couple of, and mostly it's not because reggae is bad. I don't think that it's bad or anything. As I was growing up with a friend who was for a very long while like just obsessed with Rastafarianism, even though he wasn't a Rasta. Started growing out dreadlocks, listening to a lot of reggae, smoking a lot of weed, and I hung out with them a lot, and so I got to hear a lot of reggae. So, and then I also got burnt out on a lot of reggae. I think I've heard every Bob Marley song at least like a trillion times. But there was one reggae artist, there's a couple, there's another one in here, that I really did kind of like because they're a little bit different. And this is Horace Andy. This is just like a collection. I don't think this is really very available anywhere. Like I haven't seen much information about it. I think the only thing I've seen on here was like one release from Discogs, if I can remember correctly. But it's been a long time since I looked this album up. But it has a couple of songs that I liked on here, most notably Skylarking. But this is just like a collection. This is not like a proper album. But he has a tremendous voice, and it's a little bit more happy and more upbeat. Not completely upbeat. It's not like completely ska. But it is a little bit faster tempo than a lot of reggae. And he's got a tremendous voice, and it's just really great. If you haven't given Horace Andy a listen, your musical education is woefully incomplete. It really is. So moving on. Oh, here we go. I'm a huge fan of the Mars Volta. Always have been. And I was really kind of sad after their last album dropped, they were announced that they were putting the band on hiatus, and it turned out they were having a big fight. And that was kind of a bummer. So when I heard that they were kind of reforming, they got over their differences and they were going to start working on a project together, my first thought in my mind was like, oh, they're going back and they're going to create the Mars Volta again. Nope. We got was Anti-Mask, which this album also has Flea on bass again, just like their early days with the Mars Volta, or the first album with the Mars Volta. And this is a tremendous record. There's a couple tracks on here that I think keep it from being like fantastic. Most notably, "Drowned All Your Witches" I thought was not a great song, but this is kind of going more in the vein of like At the Drive-In. The original demo tracks, when they first announced that they were producing this album, you could pre-order like these 4 tracks. And they were very raw and almost uncut, and I thought they were better versions than what came on the album. Not to say that these are bad as well, but I thought those were better. So I always made sure that I had a copy of those tracks so I could listen to them, because they're much better. Not much better. they're good. They're better versions in my opinion. But this is a tremendous album. This has Cedric Bixler Zavala and Omar Rodriguez Lopez, who are the Mars Volta. They have other bands that work with them to be the Mars Volta musical group. But this is their first project back together after their little fight. And it's pretty good. It's got Flea on bass. I believe Travis Barker, not on this album, but I heard that, I'm not sure, but I think Travis Barker was actually the drummer, the touring drummer, while they were promoting this. One of their other band members. Now we can get to the Aquabats. So, this is the Aquabats. You probably know, if you're familiar with them more recently, they're probably playing music that's more in line with like Devo and New Wave. But this was their ska era. And this is a really tremendous album. And there's a lot of songs on here that aren't ska. In fact, a lot of them are. I mean, I believe Red Sweater is not a, I have to think about it. Fight Song is not a, I think Cat with Two Heads is not a fight, excuse me, the Cat with Two Heads is not a ska song, if I remember correctly. Captain Hepton and Midget Pirate, definitely not. I think Attacked by Snakes is also not a, no, I think there's a ska part in it, if I remember correctly. Lobster Bucket. Yeah, but it's also got a couple other tracks on here that weren't on the album. Play-Doh was a secret track on the CD. Then there was Hockey Fight and Adventure Today. This is a great album, and a lot of people don't know, but the reason why Travis Barker was in Blink-182 was because he was the drummer at the time. They went through drummers like a lot of people go through underwear. Almost every album has a completely different drummer. But at the time he was touring with them, he recorded this album. That's him right there. That's Travis Barker, early Travis Barker, before he got his face tatted up. He was tatted, but whatever. And while they were touring, I guess that his drummer had an emergency with Blink-182. And so he filled in for them. And then they decided, like, yeah, he's a much better fit for Blink-182, which I don't know. He's a really great drummer. He really is. And he was also really great. But I think he was too good for ska. The way he was playing, it was kind of, it's almost like if you've seen that video of the Japanese mascot character playing like metal drums for like a kid's song. It's almost like that. But it works. It worked. It works. Just like that metal drummer did. Anyway, so this is at the drive-in. Relationship of Command. This is a 10. This album is a 10. If you want my review of it, it's a 10. It's a banger, back to forth. I can't think of a bad thing to say about this. Some of these songs are just like legendary in my head, and it should be legendary to a lot of you if you're familiar with it. And I think Rick Beato actually did a what makes this song great about this on one of the songs, One Armed Scissor, and he talked about how, and he isolated some of the tracks, and it turns out that the guitars are actually out of tune, but for some reason they work really well together. And I never noticed that until he pointed it out, and I went back and listened to it, and I can't hear them out of tune unless he plays like the isolated guitars one at a time. That's when it sounds out of tune. When it's together, it sounds great. Yeah, I can't think of a single negative thing to say about this. This is one of Cedric and Omar's best work. He's from the Mars Volta and out the drive-in as well. Can't think of a bad thing to say about this album. It's just fantastic. Kind of post-punk, kind of in the realm of emo, but not really. I think it's like post-emo maybe. If you're looking for an emo album, this is not it. But this is definitely more along of punk pop with some emo kind of influence. This I bought at a record store day. Atmosphere seemed kind of familiar. I couldn't think of it right away, and I was just like, oh, maybe it's kind of an interesting collector's item, I guess. This is some singles, the Lake Nokomis maxi single, and it's got the song Kanye West on here. Yeah, I don't really have much to say about this. I think I listened to it once, and I was like, yeah, it's not for me. But I have it. I might end up selling it or something. It's worth something. I don't know. But yeah. So this is a soundtrack. I don't really have. I have a couple of soundtracks. We'll get to them. Yeah, this is the Barbie soundtrack, and I had seen the trailer for this. I heard they were making a Barbie movie, and I was like, oh, that's gonna be lame, right? Whatever. But then I saw the trailer for it, and I was like, okay, I have to see this. This looks awesomely kind of stupid and silly in a good way. And it was great. There's some songs on here that I'm not big on Lizzo or Nicki Minaj, Charlie XCX, whatever. I don't even know who that is. But it also has the Ryan Gosling song, I'm Just Kid. It's got a Tame Impala song. Then it had a Billie Eilish song that I had never heard Billie Eilish before. And it's not because I was like avoiding it or anything. It's just, I just don't really listen to the radio or a lot of pop music, and nothing I watched or anything kind of came in contact with it as far as I know. But this is a really good song. I was really kind of shocked, like, oh my God, this is my first introduction to her. She wrote, it's a really good song. Think of, what is it called again? What Was I Made For? Pretty good. I'm really surprised. I might have to check out more of her stuff. But I got a lot of work ahead of me, so we'll get to that in good time. One of my favorite Beatles albums. I have my two favorite Beatles albums. This is a fantastic record. I don't really have to say much about this. You should already know about it. I think overall this is a better album overall. But I think in terms of like songs, there's not a bad song on here that I couldn't just turn on and listen to and be satisfied listening to. Whereas there's a couple of songs on Sgt. Pepper that I have to be listening to the album to want to listen to it. Like I want it to be the next song. But I never just want to put on For the Benefit of Mr. Kite or anything. Or She's Leaving Home. But in the context of the album, yeah, I want to hear it. But so I don't really have much to say about it. It's the Beatles. So for a while I was really obsessed with this particular album. This is why I have it. I've been digging more into Bjork's category, into Bjork's work, but I need to get more. But this is one that really stood out to me as I was kind of going through her catalog. I ended up becoming like, I was trying to go through her discography. I really liked the debut, and that Human Nature song was really good. Then I listened to this and I heard Hyper Ballad, which I had heard on like the CKY soundtrack. At least the very first part of it, but I never really listened to the whole song until, years now, but relatively recently. And I was like, oh my God, this song's great. And I listened to covers of it, and I haven't heard a good cover of Hyper Ballad at all. And I think I'm of the opinion that that song only works in one particular configuration, and it's from Post, Bjork Post. But this album is great. It's got like It's Oh So Quiet, Army of Me, Hyper Ballad, Possibly Maybe. This is a really great album. If you haven't checked this one out, this is really great. I know this is not her best album. I've listened to Homogenetic, and I think that's a better album, but I just had to get this. I just had to get this one first, mostly for Hyper Ballad, because I think that might be my favorite song of hers so far. I still need to dig more. So these are the Black Angels, Phosphine Dream. There was this neo-psychedelic movement that happened in the 2010s, mid-2010s-ish. We know it's Tame Impala, Flaming Lips kind of hitting more onto their psychedelic era. What else? What else was going on? Temples, and the Black Angels, and I really like psychedelic rock, like the 60s psychedelic rock stuff, but I felt a little bit wanting anytime I listened to it. Like, I think it needs to be more kind of psychedelic, and the neo-psychedelic movement did not let me down. This one particularly did not let me down. And it's really hard. There's no way the camera can pick it up. But the contrast between the reds and the blues, and the whole album, like the insides are like white, red, and blue. They kind of like, if you look at it, and I would notice this. I noticed this when I was a kid too. When I saw blue text on like bright blue text on bright red, or vice versa, the kind of colors would almost seem like they're jumping or moving around or squiggling. And there's some interesting kind of optical illusions that happen when you stare at this for too long. And it's a really interesting way to produce an album. If you really like 60s psychedelic rock, but were a little bit wanting by some of the more psychedelic feels, this is right up your alley. I really recommend you check out the song Entrance song. It's fucking fantastic. Now, a little known fact about me is I was a co-host in as a nationally syndicated talk radio show that was mostly in flyover states at like 3 o'clock, if I remember correctly, 3 o'clock in the morning. I think on our best or highest peak, we were at like 30 stations. But the guy who was running it was the lead singer for a punk rock band in I think the 80s and 90s. When did this come out? I don't remember. I don't know. It's there, but it's hard to read. I think it says 1990. It's really hard to read. I don't have good eyes. It's like black. I don't know if it'll pick this up, but it's like black text on like this speckled background, and I can't see it. Anyways, so he was a member of the band called Bomb, and they kind of blew their one chance. They did like this, which their message was like Nazis suck, but because it had a swastika on it, and this was their first big. Not this one. But they had a big record, and I guess one of the executives walked by and just glanced over it and saw there was a swastika in some form, not realizing that it was like, anti-Nazi. He was like, get that fucking band out of here, get that shit out of here, and kind of blew their chance. But they had some interesting music. This is a pretty good EP or a single, I guess. But a lot of the intros and outros to the show were songs. A lot of them on here. And the intro to the show was a song called "Losing the Sky" with Desi, and it's pretty good. It's pretty good. We ended up having a falling out, me and him. But I'm not going to say anything bad about him. I'm just going to say I'm very grateful for the opportunity he gave me, because I very much am. This one I regret talking about because I have to pull it out of the sleeve, and the sleeve barely fits. I need to transfer it. I need to transfer the sticker that's on here to another one that's a little bit more roomy, but I'm not going to be able to put this in. When we're done, I'm just going to set this down on the ground. But this is the Book of Mormon soundtrack. I know Penn Jillette had done a video a decade ago where he said, like, and it's really great. Just look at Penn Jillette, Book of Mormon. And he went on this long tirade of like all the great stuff he saw, and he saw some great stuff, and I'm jealous about a lot of the stuff that he saw. He was just listing off like amazing things that a lot of people would, never get a chance to see that were amazing. And he was like, still, this is the best thing that he's ever seen. And after I saw it, I can say that he was right. This is the best thing I've ever seen. And I've seen some crazy things, probably not as cool as he has, but I saw Hoobastank when they were a ska band. I already mentioned that. That wasn't amazing, but I've seen Primus in their heyday. I've seen System of a Down. In their heyday. I saw Cypress Hill. I've seen Red Man, Method Man. I've seen Long Beach All Stars when they were just playing like just nothing but like Sublime covers. It was like not too long after Bradley died. I could go on and on. I've seen some great movies. I've seen some great shows. I've seen this. I've seen Phantom of the Opera. Seen Cats. I've seen the movie Cats. That's not amazing at all. That's just nightmare fuel. But this is probably the best thing that I've ever seen. Everything is great in it. The music is fantastic. The jokes, all of them land. And what's great about it is if you know some deep Mormon lore, there's even more kind of like jokes in there that are hidden. And I was never Mormon or anything, but I know a lot of Mormon lore. I grew up with a lot of friends who were Mormon and stuff, so I kind of know all the lore and stuff. But anyways, so this is the soundtrack to the show, and the music in here is great. The lyrics in here are funny, and this is a nice little presentation. It's got like a gatefold, even though it's a double album. It's got a gatefold. It's got all the little set designs that they use during the show, even the spooky Mormon Hell Dream. But I'm not going to get into anything. I'm not going to start like a religious comment war, and I'm also not going to put this back into its sleeve until later. But I will say this: if you're familiar with Mormon kind of lore, you should understand why this is funny. The record is on golden plates. We'll just leave that there. It's funny if you know. It's funny if you know. This is my favorite album of all time, and it's not an easy listen. This is something I have to be in the mood for, but when I'm in the mood for it, I'm as happy as a pig in mud. This is Captain Beefheart and his Magic Band Strap Mask replica. This is a phenomenal album, and you'll probably hate it if you're not familiar with it and you go into it just whatever. But you really need to sit down and listen to the full 80 minutes of it, as grating as you think that it sounds, and just listen to it. The hardest part is like the first 2 tracks, especially the first one. Then it all kind of goes, then it kind of loosens up and livens up. It's still in the same vein as those, well, it's the first song, but they're a little bit more melodic after that. But he really wanted you to throw you into the deep end with Frownland. And there's a really great video by this professor of Toronto, a professor of music in Toronto, who did like a 30-minute breakdown of the Frownland, the opening track on this, which is like 1 minute and 42 seconds. And he breaks down every note. Like Captain Beefheart, I would say Captain Beefheart is in the kind of the same vein as like Kurt Cobain, where Kurt Cobain really didn't understand like music theory or anything technical with like guitars or anything, but he intuitively had a feeling for music. Captain Beefheart was the same way, except I think he intentionally tried to go beyond and try to push himself to do more experimental stuff. And the first song on this is, like I said, 1 minute and 42 seconds, and it is just a cacophony of just almost, it sounds like you gave like a bunch of like junior high schooler kids like a bunch of instruments and a couple of guitars and a bass and a drums and said, play whatever. And then had some guy, some, smoker, some chain smoking like 60-year-old man just screaming at the mic. Blah, blah. But once you start to really kind of dissect it, it's like, no, these are pieces that have been rehearsed, and oftentimes they're playing them multiple times in a row. They're in they're not atonal or arrhythmic. They are very polyrhythmic and polytonal. They're playing in different keys. They're playing in different time signatures, and he just happened to stumble on some really fantastic, well-trained musicians who could take the stuff that he was writing on the piano and figure out how to put them together. And really fascinating. And and also that same guy who did the 30-minute breakdown of it had done interviews with the surviving members of the people who put this together. Zoot, horn, Rollo, Drumbo. But Drumbo is probably one of my favorite drummers in terms of like technical skill for him to put together a song, and I think he was the one that kind of melded those two together to play in both 7/5 time, I think it was 7/5 and 5/5 time or 5/4 time together, and play at the same time so that the instruments, the two instruments that were playing in different time signatures could play together. Just fucking fantastic. I mean, that's a feat. That's a feat for you to slap those notes, if you were to take both of your fingers and like snap both time signatures, you probably couldn't do it. Not only could he do it, he wrote a drum line to it. So this is this. I'm sorry. I know I'm gonna offend a bunch of people, but whatever. I was a huge fan of George Carlin until Reddit came along, and then Reddit just kind of just ruined everything about this guy, and also a bunch of like conspiracy weirdos. And I'm not talking about like. I'm talking about people who think that like, there's evil men who prevent us from having a robot city that gives us free stuff, and Jesus was an astrological whatever, like really bizarro conspiracy theory stuff. They kind of ruined him for me, and honestly. Because of that, this has aged poorly. George Carlin has definitely aged poorly, but at the time it was kind of revolutionary. He was this is a monumental landmark for free speech law in the United States. But it's a little piece of history, and I'm not gonna lie, like a lot of the stuff he said is funny, but I've heard it so many times, and I've heard it through the lens of like listening to like really crank. And I'm talking like crank. We're not talking about like, we're talking beyond. We're talking beyond QAnon or Blue Anon, way above those, right? We're talking about like Jordan Maxwell types and Peter Joseph types. They kind of ruined him for me. And then on top of that, you have like the Reddit tier atheists, like, I can't. It's hard for me to listen to, but I really wanted a piece of history, and I saw this in an antique shop, and I said, fuck it. I'm going to hold down the fort a little bit. So I'm going to talk briefly about these three, because this is another one that I shouldn't have to spend a lot of time talking about, because you should know, and if you don't know, drop everything. This is Johnny Cash. I have Johnny Cash. I have Hello, my name is Johnny Cash, and then I have Live at San Quentin. These were so my grandfather died, and much later my grandmother died, and when my grandmother died, they had a huge stack of records. And I wish I could go through it now that I'm a big fan of like Fallout and stuff, but there probably would have been a lot more interesting stuff in there for me to grab. But I grabbed what I thought was interesting, and we're going to get into another one that I thought was interesting too. But I got these. These were in there, and I was like, "Oh, it's cool. You got some Johnny Cash stuff in here, and let's grab that." So those are some of the stuff that I grabbed. And if you haven't heard of Johnny, I shouldn't have to say much about this. This one was a first pressing that I saw in a Goodwill store for $1, and there was a bunch of other stuff, and I think it came from the same catalog or whatever, same person who donated it. There was a few other things but nothing was really interesting. This one was really interesting, so I grabbed it, and it was $1. And I tell people like, "Oh, this is a first pressing." They're like, "Oh, that's worth a bunch of money." It's not. It's not. They made millions of this. This is a hugely popular album, and it almost gets more popular as it goes. So they printed like lots of these. These are everywhere. There's also reprints everywhere, and all of that stuff drops the price on this thing. I think I checked, and I think I could get it for, last time I checked, it was like, you can get first pressings for about like $6 plus shipping. This is a band that I really enjoy, even though they are very much a product of their time, and almost sounds like a time capsule. You're going into like late 2000s, early 2010s. By the way, I'm so glad we're in the 20s, because that's so easy to say the 20s than, the aughts or the 10s. It's so funky sounding, but 20s sounds right. But anyways, this is definitely a product of that era, and that is Circa Survive. This is, I don't remember how to pronounce it. Jurana? I don't know. It's on Transparent. Oh, by the way, the Aquabats album is orange. No, it's green. It's like clear green. Forgot to take that out. I took it out for the last cut that I made. Anyways, I'm not going to take this one out because I don't have to show every color, right? I should at least mention it. But this is really good. Oh, and the Captain Beefheart, that was a black one. I didn't get the what was it? The fish scale color. Anyways, this is a really good album. This is definitely in the kind of realm of like indie rock, experimental, maybe some emo kind of influences in there. But this is, you'll listen to this and you're gonna be like, oh yeah, this is late 2000s or early 2010s for sure. But it's still great. I still think this album is better. And I think this album, when it came out, everybody was like, yeah, it's good. It's not as good as Jurana or whatever. But I think opinions have changed, and this one seems to be the darling now. And I really do like this one. This one has Get Out. It's got, I think Strange Terrain is on here. Yeah, Strange Terrain is on here. Imaginary Enemy. I Felt Free. But again, you're going to listen to this and be like, oh yeah, that came out in the early 2010s or the late 2000s, somewhere in there. But it's really good. I still recommend it. And I'm not a big fan of emo. I think that might conclude all the stuff that's emo related in here, with just the At the Drive-In and this. But those are very two different bands, by the way. Huge fan of Les Claypool, and when I heard this, I was like, this is great. This is a cover album. It's him and some other guy. I don't remember his name. But everything that Les Claypool does, like, he just, like, this is Les Claypool's Fearless Flying Frog Brigade. I think after Oysterhead, he was just like, nope, everything is me. I'm the main attraction. So yeah, it came with this little kind of liner note poster type thing. So that's him and the other guy. Brett Kehoe. So it's just him playing like a steel bass, or I guess it's like a wood steel. It's got wood and steel, looks like. Okay, I'll get back in there. Like acoustic bass. And he's playing like a steel guitar, but it's, I don't think he's playing with a, I'm putting this in, right? But it's all kind of like swamp, kind of country It's like something you would hear like if you're trudging through the swamps of like Florida, like you would hear someone like flying by on the airboat playing something like this, and chewing tobacco with a Pabst Blue Ribbon. But it's Les Claypool playing the bass, so the bass is great. But it's all a bunch of covers. It's got like Wynona's Big Brown Beaver, not just other covers that that Les has done over the years. So like there's Red State Girl and Wynona's Big Brown Beaver, Jerry's Race Car Driver, but it also has like Man in the Box by Alice in Chains. It's got Pipeline, I think that's Dick Dale. It's got Bridge Came Tumbling Down, which is an old standard. Staying Alive by the Bee Gees, but these are really great. It's definitely worth a listen. If you like Les Claypool and you're like kind of like real deep Southern stuff and you don't mind that, this is 4 Foot Shack. It's definitely great. I wished it would come out with another one because that was a great little project that he did. I'm going to talk about these in bulk. Because again, these are one of my my dear great grandpappy and grandmammy records, but I'm not going to spend too much time on it. This is Nat King Cole, the best of, which we'll get to in just a second. Yeah. So got a lot of Nat King Cole. This is something that you can put on, while you're making out with a chick. You'll love it. Really great stuff. But the thing that I'm going to complain about right now, this is the best of Nat King Cole. And can you guess what song is not on here? I'll give you a hint. The fact that it's not on here is unforgivable. I don't know why. They would omit that one. Anyway, Giant Steps. I'm not a big fan of Vox. I'm not going to get political here, but I'm not a big fan of Vox. But there was a show on that channel that is really good. It's called Earworm, and they kind of go through like these really weird and eclectic. They had a Trout Mask replica one, this one, and this is what John Coltrane is doing on here is he's jumping through different keys while playing. I think it's 154, 153, or 154. Not really too musically inclined, but while he's jumping through the 154, it's very common at jazz. He's going through like different keys, and it makes improvising on them like pretty damn hard, and it's considered kind of like a rite of passage for jazz musicians to freestyle the type of stuff for the that do 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 do. It sounds great, but once you kind of understand it, it's kind of great. And what's great is the piano player is really struggling, and they still left it in. Yeah, he is struggling. It still sounds good. I should have let the dude practice a little bit more or something, or put some prepared material for it. All right, so let's get into some couple of video game soundtracks. This is Conker's Bad Fur Day. I don't want to open this up because it's fuck it. I'll open it. What I really do like about this one, okay, come on, is that it's really packed in there. That's the problem. A lot of people kind of design the cases for these and then decide like, oh, let's put a 180 gram record in there, and then it just barely fits, and it's like, whatever. So anyways, what I liked about this is that there is a kind of old Disney style kind of labels. Have you ever seen like old, which I don't think I have. I have one, but it doesn't look like that. It's a picture disc, which we will get to. It's going to be much later down the line. And it's really a pain to get back in here because it's a 180 gram record that in a sleeve that's not meant for 180 grams. Please stop doing that. Please. And I'm looking at who did this. Remember, I am 8-bit. Please stop doing that. This is an amazing presentation for an amazing game and an amazing soundtrack for an amazing game. If you have not played Conker's Bad Fur Day, I'm going to say that the controls for any N64 game usually has aged poorly, especially ones where you have to end up doing like shooting, and this is no different. Play the Xbox version. Yeah, I know there's less cuss words in it, but who cares? Who cares? It plays so much better. It's actually beatable. But the soundtrack to this one is for the N64 version. It's got like Wendy and Company. It's also got the what do they call it? Poo. Which is a song about a big giant poop monster throwing poop balls at you while threatening to shove you up his butt. Now, I'm going to say this album is also a 10. This is Cuphead, which is like kind of like 1920s jazz, 1920s, 1930s jazz pieces. Or at least in the style of. They're not, I don't think any of them, I think all of them are like original pieces. There's a couple of things on here that I'm not a big fan of when I listen to this, and that is like the menu selection stuff, the opening track for opening song for Cuphead, which works for the game, but when you're like sitting down and listening as like a listener, it's kind of weird. You're like, come on, get to the part where you're just like playing and stuff. But again, really great presentation. It kind of looks like something you would get like on an old Victrola, right? It's got like some artwork from Cuphead. I don't wonder if they... Oh yeah, of course. It looks like something you would get on an old Victrola. That'd be funny if they put Victrola, but I think RCA still has a copyright on that. But if you like 1920s jazz or ever played Cuphead, this is definitely worth a listen. You probably already listened to it playing Cuphead. You probably haven't heard all the songs because the game is brutally hard. Brutally hard. I don't think most people have gotten through it. A lot of people just give it up. And wrote hit pieces on how ableist the... I'm not going to. But no, they did. But they wrote articles about saying that the developers were ableist for making the game so difficult, not having an easy thing, which I completely disagree. I really do like hard platformers. Like Celeste is fucking amazing, and it does not have an easy mode, but no one gave that one shit. I wonder why. Anyways, this is Daft Punk, Random Access Memories. I really do wish, and I really do need to round out my collection with some more Daft Punk, but I'm not a millionaire, so I just can't buy everything I want. But those things are readily available. They're everywhere, and they're not too expensive, so I might end up throwing it in my collection very soon. In fact, by the time we get to the unplayed stuff, we'll get to that. When we get to the unplayed stuff, there might be some in there by the time I get there. We'll see. But unless you've been living under a rock, you've already, at least in 2013, unless you've been living under a rock in 2013, you've heard Get Lucky. This album is a lot of kind of like 70s funk. This is definitely outside of their wheelhouse. I didn't really get into their house stuff until much later on. But this was like my first, like, okay, I really do like this album, because I'm not really big on techno and stuff, and house kind of falls under the category, I guess, of techno. I guess I get a lot of people upset. We're gonna wrap this up after. What's next? We'll do two quick ones. Yes, two quick ones. Running out of time here. Really great. I don't really need to say much about it. You should probably already know about that album. It was a splash when it came out. It was everywhere. And of course, Dead Kennedys, Bedtime for Democracy. And I got to be real careful because the record's on the bottom and it'll fall out if I just do that, which is really poor design. Record should have gone on this spot. But yeah, Dead Kennedys. Fantastic record. This is back to their roots. The album before this one was Fragrant Christ. It was a little bit more experimental. I like it, but it's a lot of people's least favorite Dead Kennedy. And it is my least favorite Dead Kennedys album. But it's still good. It's still good. You're really comparing two great things, or three. Or how many albums they have? Like I think they had 4 great albums. It's the only one I have so far, and I have hesitations about giving the Dead Kennedys without Jello Biafra any money after all the stuff that he put them through. But anyways, Dead Milkmen. Fantastic satirical punk band from Detroit, Michigan, and they are fucking great. Pardon my French, but they're fucking great, and they're fucking hilarious. Punk Rock Girl's on here. My favorite Dead Milkmen song is Stewart, which I highly recommend. If you have not heard Stewart by the Dead Milkmen, drop everything you're doing and listen to it. We're wrapping up here anyway, so actually just wait until this is over and then listen to it. Stewart. It's fantastic on my Koopy Boot channel, which I upload stuff that I don't want dings on my channel for copyright stuff. Music that I know that the artist wouldn't mind it being up on there, and they're going to get the money for it anyway. And it's not a monetized channel anyway. It's just I'll put it up there if I don't see it anywhere else. but some guy had done a kind of lip sync cover of this, and it was great. And for some reason, he got dinged with a copyright strike. This was probably like 10 years ago. And I was like, no one's put it back up, and they don't have an issue with it anymore. So I'm just going to put it up there. And it's been up there for a while, and no one's given any problems with it. So, and I give proper credit for the person who originally created it. Don't worry. But yeah, go watch it and go listen to it, or just listen to it. It's a fantastic song. Really great, really great. One of my favorite comedy bands for sure. So we're gonna wrap this up here. I will talk to you guys later. Then we'll get through some other ones. I think 45 minutes ish is probably a good kind of stop point. We go through this, and we'll probably have to take like maybe 4, maybe 5. Maybe 5 with the singles and stuff. So anyways, I will talk to you guys later. Worms.